What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to more Let's Play Destiny. In the last episode, we entered Oryx's throne world, took on the Trial of the Totems, and defeated the War Priest. And today, we are heading into Golgoroth's cellar, where we are about to encounter one of the truly most unique encounters that we have ever gotten in a raid. It's not my favorite encounter, but I certainly like this one a lot. Now, this first part we're heading into is known as Golgoroth's Maze, mainly a name for the community because it's kind of a maze, but it's also not really. It's pretty straightforward. There's really only like one correct path and two wrong paths everywhere you turn. However, around these mazes are a bunch of plates, and I believe right now my team is kind of coordinating on where to go because you have to step on the plates in a certain order. If you step on them in the wrong order, they damage you and can even kill you if you're not careful. But stepping on all of these plates in the correct order throughout the maze does eventually reward, or will reward you with a secret chest that spawns in a room in the central section of the maze. So that's this kind of first thing we're doing. It's just another option for a secret chest. There are 3 secret chests throughout this raid, by the way, which is more than can be said for the previous raids. So that's pretty nice. So I'm heading to what I believe is the 5th plate right now. And now you can actually see me step on it. And this is, again, don't step on that too early or else it damages you. But this is us actually stepping in the correct sequence. You see that starts the summoning circle part. And then once everybody steps on it, it says a chest appears. And then you know you are good. So now we run back to get our chest. And then we may proceed on into the next encounter. So I'm not going to try and tell you guys that I am some expert on the way raids work in like MMOs, for instance, like World of Warcraft, but I have often heard from certain people that this next encounter is by far the most similar to a World of Warcraft style encounter, mainly because it has what is essentially a distraction mechanic and a DPS mechanic, and you've got 2 separate groups that are doing all of these things in a way that has never really been done in Destiny before. And in the execution of these mechanics is 100% crucial to extending the damage phase, essentially. So as we head into this place, and I do believe everybody's going to have to gather here around the door once we are able to get started, but when we head into this place, you're going to notice some very interesting things about the room. So this is another symmetrical room, as a lot of Destiny raid encounters are. And in this room is a pit and an upper balcony area. The upper balcony area is going to be important to 2 people, and the pit is important to the other 4. Golgoroth is going to spawn in, and he is a giant monstrosity of an ogre. Now, most ogres are weak to being hit in the face, but Golgoroth's a little bit different. His 2 weak spots are actually on his back, which kind of is open and undulates and has these little, I guess, tendrils kind of poking out of it. But it's not open at this exact moment. It will eventually open, but it's not open right now. His other weak spot, and the main weak spot, the one that's important for DPS, is on his underbelly. And down below, kind of like right where his belly button would go, very similar to a fight, a strike boss in Destiny 1 named Fogoth, although this one behaves a little bit differently. Now, he's going to be firing at people all around the room while we're killing enemies and whatnot, and the enemies are going to constantly be spawning throughout the fight. But eventually, these things right here are going to start to spawn, and this is also how you start the encounter, shooting one of these down. These are pools of light. That is really all they are. Eventually, you will pop this thing, it's going to drop to the ground, and this is where the DPS team is concerned with their job. They are going to drop here into the pool of light, and from here, they are going to deal as much damage as they possibly can. Every once in a while, the people in the pool of light are going to get an unstable light debuff. This is going to be essentially a bomb, and everything in the radius aside from the holder will be damaged by it. So you do not want to be next to your team when it goes off. But what you do want to do is run up to Golgoroth, basically give him a nice big hug, and let it go off there because it will do a nice chunk of damage to him while you're continuing to do all of this damage here in these pools. Eventually, the pools spawn. You're going to have to shoot them down. They take a lot of damage to actually create, and eventually they drop to the ground, and you're allowed to do more damage, because outside of the pools of reclaimed light, you basically do nothing in the way of damage, so you need to be standing in these things. Now, while the DPS team is doing all of this, and there are 6 of these pools of reclaimed light, by the way, before the DPS phase ends, just FYI, progressively getting closer to Golgoroth as you go. Now, while these 4 people are doing DPS, while we're doing DPS, what are the other 2 people doing? Well, that's where his back comes in. So that back is something that you can do a lot of damage to, but you can only do that damage to it 1 time. The people up top are basically going to be pulling Golgoroth's gaze in any given direction. So if to do damage to Golgoroth, we need him to be looking a certain way, basically towards the damage bearers, but he's not paying attention to the DPS damage people. He's actually paying attention to the distractors who are up top. So what they need to do is pull his gaze, which is done by shooting him in the back, thus having his gaze shifted, and there will be a small timer that will countdown. I believe it's 15 seconds, and during these 15 seconds, Golgoroth is going to fire all of his seeking darts and damage at the person he is looking at, and they are basically just going to take his aggro for a while. But they need to be standing in such a way that they are behind the DPS group so that Golgoroth's weak spot is pointed towards the DPS group. Does that make sense? But eventually that timer is going to run down, and if it goes all the way to 0, DPS is over. That's it. You have failed your mission. It is a unsuccessful task, and everything starts over, and you have not done nearly enough damage because Golgoroth has like 3 bajillion health. So, to prevent this from happening, the 2 people up top are going to communicate with one another, and honestly, they're going to really be the only ones doing the talking. The DPS group should more or less know what to do, aside from just telling when another pool of reclaimed right is ready to shoot down. So the 2 people are going to communicate. They're going to start counting down. My gaze is ending in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Also, that was a beautiful ricochet. That's amazing. And the other person wants to shift the gaze as close to the timer ending as possible, but they still need to do a considerable amount of damage. So you have to use something like a linear fusion rifle or a very high-powered sniper rifle, something to that effect to actually cause him to properly shift his gaze. But then, once that's done, he's obviously going to turn towards the other person, which makes doing damage hard, so they have to run into position real quick and make sure his gaze is shifted, while the other person runs back to their backside to be ready to do that damage again. It's a lot of moving parts. A lot is going on in this fight, and it is a lot of people working together. 4 people just laying into Golgoroth while also focusing on other things like enemies around the room and all of these pools that they have to constantly keep up, while the other 2 are also dealing with enemies aggroing them and the boss aggroing them, and also making sure that they are positioned in such a way that the rest of their team can do damage. And there's so much going on here that it's, I think, honestly, a very beautiful fight. It's really well executed and just so unlike anything else that Destiny has ever done before. And I think that it deserves a lot of credit for that. This is one of those very special fights that Bungie was able to make with Destiny mechanics that you really never would have thought you'd seen before. So I don't think I'm going to actually... I think I just ran away because there was no way I was going to get into a position to actually be able to do the damage necessary there. Also, wow, we failed to capture Golgoroth's gaze at the very, very end, too. So there you go. There's the punishment when you don't actually do it right. I think one of our gaze pullers actually died there, but you'll see that he's going to die almost immediately. So a good way to show what happens when you don't do the run perfectly. Now, I should also mention that those orange acolytes that are in the room, they're called fanatics. They're a little damage explosion aura around them when they are killed. Is actually very deadly, so make sure you're not standing in that. That is just a very little thing to mention. It's not that it does like a lot of damage or anything. It actually gives you like a little debuff that will kill you over time. So you want to make sure that you keep your distance from those guys. Because, yeah, they will mess you up if you're not careful. You can't just be running around punching and shotgunning everything in the room all day, as tempting as that might be. So this is going to be us finishing it off, and I think I'm going to actually get my super this time. Yeah, I just got him at the feet. There we go. And down goes Golgoroth, and with a bang, too. How disgusting is that? What a cool fight, though. I love that fight. And you know what? It's not the only other cool fight in the raid because, well, I'm going to be honest. This raid is nothing but bangers, guys. It's so freaking good. I don't know if it's my favorite raid, but gosh dang, is it freaking close. So onwards we go, and this is where we're going to get into yet another platforming section, a much shorter platforming section than the one with the ships, but in some ways actually a harder platforming section than that. Mainly because of how unforgiving this is, and this is why I am a coward and I switched to Strand, because here there are names for this section. The most common one, I'm going to be completely frank, is just the dick wall, because yes, they just look like a bunch of thrusting dicks that are meant to punch you across the room, and it is hilarious when somebody gets caught by one because they go flying across the room, and yeah, they're pretty much dead when that happens. So as we get across this room, we have to basically go over here, use these plates to spawn some bridges that we can go across. There's going to be essentially just 3 plates that spawn 2 sets of bridges. So go across to this plate to let people cross to you, but then also to spawn the next set of bridges, and to spawn the last set of bridges, you need to get to the plate on the far side of the next area. Then you go up, and up at the top of the area is where we're going to head off to Oryx. But on top of everything else, there is another secret chest in here, and those plates, those bridges, are essentially formed by simply getting up close to them, which is was a common theme around the Dreadnought, and was something that a lot of people had to do. So I'm kind of just holding this for the time being, but mainly because as a Strand cheater, I can literally just grapple my way up to this place without really doing any of the mechanics. So look at that. Boom. Right there. Yeah, you're supposed to go up these bridges that eventually lead you up to it, but I decided to flex in a way that I didn't really need to flex. And, I mean, honestly, I'm not even going to say it was really all that hard. It was just cool. And sometimes that's all Destiny is about, is being flashy. So, downwards we go, back towards the start, because honestly, this is just kind of the easier way to go. And now we may proceed into the next part of this platforming section. And I do believe I'm going to actually have a cut here, just to get on with all the nonsense as everybody else gets their chest. So, now we make it to the next part. They're already standing on the plate, so we are good to proceed. And now it's just about going upwards. It's just about watching the dicks as they thrust out of the wall and making sure you don't get hit by them. They generally are safe to run past the second they recede, but sometimes they will come out very, very quickly, so you got to be careful. Like that right there was already pretty darn risky, going past that last one. I definitely got greedy there, but I did make it. But yeah, you need to just go up and up and up. And, I mean, you can absolutely do so without grapple. It's not required, obviously. I mean, you can see the way that all of the sort of walls are positioned. But I, again, essentially just cheated because I don't like going through this section normally, because it can be very frustrating if you do get knocked off. So there we go. Like I said, shorter section than the Tomb Ship section, but a lot harder and a lot easier to die in, where... I mean, I would say it's more embarrassing to die in the Tomb Ship section, but it's, well, I don't know. Maybe that's not true, because getting punched across the arena is also pretty freaking hilarious to everybody else that's watching what happens. Especially for first-timers who have never been through this part, that is the section right there to take a brand new player through and see what happens, because it's honestly just... It's just a good time. And trust me, there are other raids and dungeons, for that matter, that do very much the same thing. So... into the final arena we go, and you're going to see a couple cuts here, mainly just because this encounter is stupid and automatically starts if someone even so much as fires a bullet, which you can see here. So that started before we even got to rally, and we have to kill ourselves and be very, very careful. It's really dumb that it starts that way. But now is the real thing. Okay, so there is actually a significant amount of overlap between both of these encounters. First, though, we have the Daughters of Oryx. There are 2 hive wizards up in their little bubbles up top, and we need to deal with them. But to deal with them, we have to do a mechanic. There are 4 plates around the room, and these plates are elevated. So what we do is we essentially split off into 2 groups of 3. In 2 of the people in these groups are going to man a plate, and the third is essentially a floater who mans the plate whenever the other person is occupied. A knight is going to spawn on one of these plates. That knight needs to die. When the knight dies, that is the starting plate. If we look up in the air, we can see that there is Toland, a little glowing spark up in the sky. That tells us that this is the other plate that needs to be activated. Once both plates are stand on, the platforms will appear, and the person that is taken, aka me in this moment, has to run all the way to Toland, collect it, and there we go. It says a piece of the brand claimer is found. We've already gotten 2. Then there is going to be a third, and we are trying to do all of this in under 2 minutes, because once the Dirge of Unraveling ends, we all die. So we're trying to go really, really fast here, but eventually a third person is going to go. We're calling out the plates over comms. They are running to their spots, and once the last one is claimed, they get the same aura that we were using in the battle against the War Priest, although this time that we are not going to be extending the damage phase. This is instead just a speed run. So the faster you get to the damage phase, the longer you have time to do the damage. What we are going to do is dunk the brand on the wizard that is not glowing green, which is going to take down their shield, and now we can lay into them with damage. We will use Gallarhorn and rockets here just because you don't want to be actually close to the wizard while dealing as much damage as we can. Inside the aura, though, we are completely invincible, which is good. Now, Timer is counting down, getting close to 2, 1, and I don't think we actually kill this wizard. Or do we kill? Maybe we do. Oh, so unbelievably close, which is actually a good thing. You don't want that. You don't, if you're not actually fully prepared for it, that is. Because the thing is that once a wizard dies, you've only got 1 damage phase to kill the other wizard, or else you actually lose. So now the green effect on the wizard swaps over to the other daughter, and this time we are going to be damaging the one that we were not shooting at last time. But very, very much the same mechanic, rinse and repeat, torn between dimensions, go to the different plates, grab all the pieces of the brand claimer, dunk it on the wizard that's not glowing, and then do as much damage as you can to her as possible. So it says Hymn of Weaving now as opposed to Dirge of Unraveling. They're the same thing. They both are a wipe mechanic. They're just different because those are the different effects of the daughters in the lore. One is the Weaver, and the other is the Unraveler. So yeah, very, very powerful Hive priestesses, not unlike the Death Singer from Crota. And this is their entire duty, is to basically just unmake whoever dares enters Oryx's throne world. So this time, I'm going to get called to the front side of the room. It's not like I get a choice. Oh, no, actually, I did get called to the back. Never mind. We just weren't 100% sure where that was. But now I'm going to be taking the platforms across to a different spot. Now, where you have to go is completely random. So all plates need to be at the ready and good to go. Somebody needs to be covering everything. Otherwise, this is going to get a little dicey. This is why you want to have that floater, because a plate person may be called at any time to run on the plates. It's totally random who gets called, so everybody has to be ready to do the mechanic here. So we got 35 seconds to lay into this wizard with as much damage as possible. So here we go. Once again, as much damage as we possibly can to take her out. So here we go. And there's so much time that, honestly, I think we're going to probably get to it, maybe. I don't know. We will see. But we're just kind of whittling her down. I am just using a very standard rocket that is mostly supplemented by the Gallarhorn damage. I do think we are going to do one more phase, possibly, but it obviously remains to be seen, especially without heavy. It might be a little bit hard, but I don't know. We might honestly get there. Because the other one is so close, if we can finish her off, that would be for the best. And yes, we did get her. Okay, so next damage phase, we are going after the other one, but the brand is gone, so we got to go do this one more time. And like I said, there is a lot of mechanic overlap with this encounter and the next encounter, but the next encounter is a bit more fleshed out, and you'll see what I mean here soon. So I'm just over here helping kill the knight while the other person is distracted and not dealing with the plate, because sometimes that happens. You need to be on your toes, ready to help everybody at any given time. But more or less, I am covering this plate over here. Now, as for call-outs in this part, I'm going to be frank with you. All we do is name our plate. We just number our plates. So there's a right plate, right 1 plate, and a right 2 plate, and a left 1 plate and a left 2 plate. 1 are the plates that are closest to the doors and the entrance of the arena as we come in from the last platforming section, and 2 are the furthest ones. So like the one I'm on right now is right 2. A lot of people have arguments over, oh, right back, right front, left back, left front. We're not doing that because that is stupid. People get into way too many semantics over that, over what's the front and the back of the room. I find it so much easier to just number your plates, and that way everybody is all on the same page when you're doing this part. So those are the call-outs that we're using in this encounter, is just being like, oh, it's right, left, etc. 1, 2, it's so much easier. Like, oh, the knight is on this one, and Toland is on this one. Step on your 2 plates and let the person proceed. That's really it. So they are about to dunk the last one, and we are going to lay into the damage, which is going to be basically just a sliver. So as soon as he dunks it here, we just pretty much, I think I just fire like, I think I just ran up and punched her, actually. Yeah, we couldn't even do that because she got Nova Bomb too quickly. And there we go. That is the Daughters of Oryx, everybody. So now it is time to take on the Taken King himself. Run to the very far side of the room and say hello. So yeah, that blew everybody's minds back in 2015. Meet Oryx, the Taken King, and he is very, very unhappy that we are here and that we've made it this far, so he fully intends to finish us off. Okay, so Similar to the last encounter, you are going to be managing 4 plates, and you are also going to have a random person that is taken at any time that is going to be trying to claim a brand, but you're going to be using that brand a little bit differently this time around, and there are additional mechanics. Now, the way that this fight starts is on whatever plate Oryx decides to slam his fist down on. In fact, he moved back to the R1 plate, and he's going to slam his fist down there, and thus begins the encounter. So, similar concept. There's not a time limit as much this time, but there is still... you still need to go pretty quickly to get everything done that you want to get done here. So, same thing. Run to the plates, and then I'm going to be platforming. And what we're going to be doing this time is we're going to grab the pieces, but the third person, instead of dunking it on the boss, is actually going to be dunking it on a special enemy that is going to be spawning at some point. However, while all of this is going on, everybody else is going to be responsible for a couple of other things. For one, ogres are going to spawn around the room, and these ogres are called Light Eater ogres. Upon killing them, in their place are going to spawn taken bombs. And these bombs are necessary for the DPS part of the mechanic. However, on top of that, you're also going to have knights that are going to spawn in that are going to come and to try to destroy these bombs. This is a bad thing because you need all of these bombs to do as much damage to Oryx as is possible. Now, this is the one thing that was changed from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. In Destiny 1, the damage you could do to Oryx was finite. There wasn't really a such thing as DPS with your weapons. You would do damage conditional to Oryx based on how many bombs you detonated. But in this version, the bombs are actually just required to get to the damage phase. So the third person, the last person to get the brand, is going to steal it from that knight right there. Okay? Once they get that, everybody is going to run to their bombs to get ready to detonate them. Do not step in them too early, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be waiting for a prompt from Oryx that tells you it's time. So I'm going to stand next to my bomb right here. Don't go inside the aura. And a pop-up is going to sound here in just a second, now that all 3 people have it and the brand has been claimed. Get ready. Oryx calls upon the darkness. You run in here, you stand here for a second until your name pops up again. That says detonated corrupted light. Then you run back to the middle, and you want to get there quick, because if you don't, the white mechanic happens and everybody not inside of the aura dies. The more bombs detonated, the longer the damage phase will be. So now is the time to just lay into Oryx and shoot as much damage as you can into his chest as is possible. After the damage phase is over, which is pretty much just whenever, you'll know it when he basically goes immune. But once the damage phase is over, then begins the intermediary phase, which can be one of 2 things, and I actually have no idea what we're going to get. So damage phase is over, everybody run out, and let's see what we get. It's either going to be the... what is essentially a carpet bombing or a battle to the death inside of an arena. And that sounds crazy, but you'll have to see it for yourself. So we got the battle to the death. So one by one, each of us are going to get sucked into this arena to battle what is essentially just the smaller version of Oryx running around with a sword, teleporting around, and you have to kill him. Very similar to the final boss fight in the Regicide mission in the Taken King. Everybody has to kill this thing as quickly as you can, because if all 6 people get trapped inside this room and don't kill it in time, you wipe. Fight over. So we're all going to be working together to doing as much damage as we can. Whoever gets teleported in, though, is completely random. I still have not been teleported. In fact, I think I'm one of the last. There's just 2 of us that have it. So I'm the 5th one in, and we're still trying to kill this thing. So we got to get it quick, otherwise we are going to die here. If you do not get this version of the fight, which we did kill him there, if you do not get this version of the intermediary, instead you get a carpet bombing, where essentially bombs are going to start going off around the arena to essentially kill you, so you just have to keep running, but you also want to make sure you're not running too close to other people, or they might get killed by the same bombs that are trying to kill you. Does that make sense? Lots going on. Now let's explain how this fight is working in the lore, because this is the first time I actually get to do this in this raid. So the thing about Oryx is that you can't kill Oryx the way you killed Crota. Crota can be defeated by the sword logic because Crota is a slave to the sword logic, but Oryx doesn't have such weaknesses. Oryx is a master of the sword logic. If you were to use the sword logic against him, you would surely fail, because he has become the Taken King. He wields the sword logic in a way where we would just be subdued no matter what we try to do. So we need to find a way around that. So what we are doing instead is using bomb logic. That's right. It's a weird name for it, but it's what it's called. Bomb logic is the idea that by using bombs, by using explosions, by using the ability to completely destroy light, we can, well, destroy our own light. We can actually use that instead to weaken Oryx, which is completely alien and antithesis to anything that has ever been used against him before. Again, we can't beat him at his own game, so instead we have to use our own game, which involves using the light, something that he does not have. And this is the only way we're going to beat him, but we gotta be sure about this. We gotta be true, and we gotta make sure that we are precise. Kill all the knights, kill all the ogres, detonate the bombs, and eventually destroy him in much the same way that we destroyed his daughters, but with overwhelming firepower. It's the only way of defeating him inside his own throne world. This is an awesome fight. It is so fun in action. It has everybody working in tandem. Honestly, it is, I would go as far to say it is my favorite final boss fight in all of Destiny. It's, again, this is not my favorite raid, it's a close second, but as far as the final bosses go, I love this fight. The energy, the feeling, the vibe around it, everybody working in tandem to do exactly what they're supposed to do, knowing their roles, doing their jobs correctly, and doing as much damage as you possibly can to this giant freaking enemy, which honestly, we don't get nearly enough of these. Like, don't get me wrong, Crota was big, Atheon was big, but they got nothing on this guy, because look at the size of him, man. He's huge. Yeah, you're not going to see anything like this for quite some time as far as raids are concerned. So just keep laying into him, and if we can get him to pass that damage threshold, the final stand will begin. Now, the final stand is also interesting because it's got its own mechanic. So eventually, oh, just missed it, but hopefully we can at least show the carpet bombing here. But we sure got him pretty darn close. Is it the other name for this, by the way, the little battle to the death is called the Thunderdome, and it looks like we got the Thunderdome again. I've always loved that idea too. We're literally going into the Thunderdome to battle the gods amongst the storms and whatnot, because if you look in the background, there is actually like a raging storm going on inside, which I always thought was pretty darn cool. So just missed his damage phase, but this gives me an opportunity to explain how the final stand works. So when you hit the damage threshold for final stand, which again we were just shy of, what's going to happen is 2 more bombs are going to appear. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to detonate these same bombs, again, to extend the final stand damage phase. But what you need to do is basically just send everybody over to the bombs. While you have a second, he is going to do the same thing where he's going to try to wipe the room, but the person holding the aura is still going to have that aura. So you detonate the bombs, and then what's going to happen is you're going to have some time to do damage to Oryx, but then when the bombs go off, they will massively extend that damage phase, and then I believe you've got something like 30 seconds to, man, imagine if I could hit a bow shot here. Imagine you got something like 30 seconds beyond that to do as much damage as you can to then kill Oryx once and for all. So that is something you need to be prepared for. Usually we just have designated bomb detonators. Typically the people that, what I've always liked to do is the people that own the same bombs that they had before, because in much the same way someone is responsible for the plates, they should also be responsible for the bombs. If you ever need to switch up roles, that's what the floater is for, and the floater should always be taking precedence of the plate over the bomb. Does that make sense? So like if I needed to manage my plate right now, Rat King, who is our floater, would be taking my plate while I go and then worry about detonating the bombs, although there's not really a lot of overlap except for on the very final part here, just because usually the bombs aren't really necessary until after the brand has been claimed. But this also applies to things like killing the ogre, killing the knights, all of which are also necessary because you do not want to lose out on a bomb, nor do you want to kill an ogre too late, because that's going to cause you a whole lot of problems. And the knights always spawn after the ogres do. The Light Eater Knights, they will also always run diagonally towards the other bomb. So the one I killed would have run over towards the bomb nearest the L2 plate, if that makes sense. Oh, that's a lot of explaining. And yeah, I know I said before back in the Vault of Glass raid that these were not going to be guides, but they kind of have turned into that, at least for the time being, just because there isn't a lot of lore to explain, especially in these older raids. But as we start getting into future raids, obviously that is going to change up a little bit. It's just that in a raid like this in King's Fall, where we already kind of know the way the Hive work, we already kind of know how Throne Worlds tick, we kind of already know what's going on here from the perspective of the lore. All that's really left to do is to explain the encounters, and because the encounters in this raid are so freaking awesome, I'm kind of happy to do that here. I love King's Fall. It is such a wonderful raid, the way everything kind of flows together. the way that you're doing, you're just working together as a team to take care of all these different things. So as you can see here, I am not detonating a bomb because I am the brand holder instead. Last person has to be the brand holder, by the way. I don't know if that was made immediately obvious, but because of that, we have switched up roles a little bit, but now I am only using special damage because we just want to get Oryx to the damage threshold, and then begins the actual mechanic. So once again, they run off to do the bombs because I am the brand holder, so I can't do that this time. Just 2 bombs this time. So we just got to wait it out. Make sure you don't fire your heavy bow at a single dinky thrall, because I almost did that. And once those bombs are about ready to detonate, and the Light Eater Ogres have to go down. Once they're ready to detonate, same thing. Do not step into it too early, because if you do that, you will lose those bombs. So we start doing damage. We let the others detonate that corrupted light. They're going to run back here to the brand in time and hopefully stay alive. And now the bombs detonate and the phase begins. And apparently somebody didn't get the memo as they died over there, but we should be more than fine because, like I said, we got plenty of time, even though I personally do not have a whole lot of ammo. So just keep laying into him. Don't stop until he's dead. And say farewell to the Taken King. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for this episode of Let's Play Destiny. Thank you all so very much for watching. You get that awesome image of Oryx floating away towards Saturn in the background. And that is it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed this episode very, very much. And I will see you all in the next one.